I'm a single mother, dating a 50-year-old man. But he also has kids, and I wish he didn't, because I want someone who would focus only on my children and make us his priority, instead of spending more money on his own kids than on mine. I met Lucas in a photography course. He was that kind of man you thought only existed in movies, cultured, stable, with a smile that made you feel like the center of the universe. At 38, after a decade of raising my children alone, I felt that the universe was finally compensating me for all the sacrifices. The first date was magical. We talked for hours, and when I mentioned I was a single mother of 2 children, his eyes didn't show the hint of panic I saw in other men. On the contrary, he nodded with understanding. I have 2 as well, he said with a pride that I found touching at that moment. Mario is 16 and Claudia is 19. They are my world. That phrase, "they are my world," should have alerted me. But in my foolish happiness, all I thought was, what a responsible man. Everything was perfect until theory collided with practice. The first time he invited my children, 8-year-old Leo and 10-year-old Sophia, to spend a day at the park, he organized everything with care. He bought their favorite ice creams, asking me about the flavors beforehand, but he also bought an extra chocolate bar for Mario. He has celiac disease, and this is the only one he can have, he said. I watched as that chocolate, an inanimate object, took up space in the snack bag and symbolically in Lucas's attention. My treacherous mind started to calculate how much that special chocolate had cost. More than the ice creams. It was an absurd thought, I know, but it settled in me like a seed of unease. Lucas played with my children, put them on his shoulders, told them stories. My children were ecstatic, and instead of happiness, I felt a pang of anxiety. They were getting used to this attention, to this level of detail. What if it all ended later? The introduction to his children was the next step in my anxiety. Claudia, a university student, was a cold and distant girl. She greeted me with a courtesy that bordered on indifference. Mario, a shy teenager, barely mumbled a hello. Lucas, however, was beaming with pride. He talked about Claudia's grades and Mario's last soccer game. I heard his voice full of love, and to my own horror, my brain began to translate it. Every achievement of theirs is a resource that will not go to mine. Every euro spent on her university tuition is €1 less for Sophia's future education. That night, after meeting them, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Lucas sent me a message. It was a wonderful day. Your children are adorable. I replied with a yes, they were. The shadow of his children, long and demanding, loomed over our idyll. I began to examine every gesture, every word under the microscope of my fear. If Lucas mentioned he was going to buy Mario new sneakers, I immediately thought that Leo's were also worn out. He spoke with excitement about a trip Claudia would take with the university. I mentally calculated the cost and compared it to the vacation I could offer my children. My justification was noble, pure. I was a lioness protecting her cubs. In a cruel and competitive world, my biological and moral duty was to ensure my children got the best possible piece of the pie. Lucas, with his extended family, represented a threat to that fundamental principle. His kindness was a double-edged sword. It wasn't a conscious thing at first. It was a whisper in the back of my mind that slowly became a scream. I started making subtle comments, litmus tests for his loyalty. Leo wants to learn to play the guitar, but the lessons are so expensive. I would let it hang in the air, watching his reaction. Lucas, always helpful, would reply, "What a great idea. I have a friend who gives lessons. Maybe he can give us a good price," but that wasn't enough. I didn't want a good price. I wanted him to offer to pay for it without the children he already had stealing that money from him. I wanted proof that we, the 3 of us, were his absolute priority, that his previous world had been replaced by ours. Now, looking back, I realized that I was building a cage for our relationship with my own hands, convinced that I was building a bulletproof fort for my children's future. Every smile from Lucas towards his own children, every normal and healthy show of love, was interpreted by me as a betrayal. I convinced myself that what I felt wasn't jealousy, but logical and maternal foresight. I was protecting mine from a future of half measures and emotional crumbs. How could anyone, even a wonderful man like Lucas, divide his heart and his wallet in half without my children losing out? The answer in my head was clear. He couldn't. And if he couldn't, then I had to act. The stage was set. The tension, although only I could feel it in its full magnitude, was already a weight on us. The temptation manifested not as a carnal desire, but as an urge to test his commitment. I needed tangible confirmation that we came first. So I planned a trap disguised as an innocent family plan. "Lucas," I said one afternoon, snuggled on the couch, "the kids are obsessed with that new water park that just opened. I've been saving up, but with all the school expenses it's crazy how much the tickets cost." I let the sentence hang in the air like a fly over honey. He, of course, took the bait with his characteristic generosity. "Don't worry, my treat. It will be a surprise." A family day, my heart skipped a beat. It had worked. For a second, the anxiety dissipated. We were his family. We deserved it. But the victory lasted less than 24 hours. That same night, while we were having dinner, his phone rang. It was Claudia. He hung up and looked at me with a slightly apologetic expression. "Look, honey, it's silly, but Claudia has an important exam next week and she's realized her laptop is failing. She needs a new one urgently. The water park thing. Do you mind if we postpone it for a couple of weeks? That unexpected expense." He couldn't finish the sentence. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. There it was, the irrefutable proof. His children would always come first. A whim of his children, because to me at that moment, a new computer was a whim. It canceled out a promise made to mine. I nodded with a tense smile. "It's okay, Lucas. We understand." But inside, every word was a poison dart. We understand. We understand that we are not the priority. From that moment on, every interaction with him became a minefield that I had planted myself. I began to actively look for evidence, collecting every anecdote that confirmed my bias. If he was 5 minutes late for a date because he had gone to pick up Mario from practice, I would mentally note that abandonment. And if he mentioned he had helped Claudia move into her new student apartment, I would calculate the cost of the deposit and rent and compare it to Sophia's dentist bill that I had paid the previous month. My inner monologue was a mantra of self-preservation. You have to protect Leo and Sophia. You can't let them get their hearts broken. You can't let them get used to a standard of living that he is not willing to guarantee them 100%. I began to subtly sabotage his attempts to get closer. When he proposed a plan that included his children, I would make excuses. My children had homework, or they weren't feeling well, or we already had other plans. I wanted to create a clear dichotomy, us or them. I wanted to force him to choose. In my twisted mind, it wasn't me who was being cruel. It was him, by not seeing the inherent conflict of interest, who was forcing us into this situation. Once, after rejecting another family plan, he asked me with genuine concern, "Have I done something wrong? I feel like you're pulling away." I had to bite my tongue to not blurt out, "Yes, you have done something wrong. You have other children." I just said, "It's just stress, Lucas. Raising children alone isn't easy." I used my status as a single mother as a shield, as an immunity card that justified any paranoia. The rationalization of my actions became more elaborate. I convinced myself that I was actually doing Lucas a favor. Wouldn't it be easier for him to be with a woman without children? A woman who wouldn't demand that he divide his resources and attention. A woman with whom he could start from scratch, without the baggage of 2 families. My thoughts became incredibly twisted. By pushing him away, by setting impossible conditions, I was giving him the freedom to find a less complicated happiness, and at the same time I was protecting my own from an eventual disappointment. It was an act of love for both him and my children. A painful act of love, yes, but necessary. The fault was not mine, it was fate's, which had made 2 people perfect for each other meet at the wrong time in their lives. I, the self-sacrificing mother, had to bear that cross. The temptation to test him had evolved into the compulsion to push him off the cliff, all wrapped in the noble cloak of maternal protection. The central act of my betrayal was not a FAI, but an ultimatum. I planned it meticulously, choosing a nice restaurant, a place where we had been happy, so that the harshness of my words would contrast brutally with the sweetness of the setting. I arrived there with the determination of a general about to fight the final battle for her territory. Lucas was beaming, believing it was a romantic date to reconnect. While he looked at the menu, I looked at his face, fumbling for a last vestige of doubt that would make me back down. I didn't find it. I only saw confidence, and that somehow enraged my distorted sense of justice even more. The dinner proceeded with a ghostly normality. He talked about his projects, a possible promotion, how much we meant to him. Every word of his was a nail in the coffin of our relationship, because in none of them did I hear the explicit renunciation of his other children that my heart demanded. When dessert arrived, his favorite flan, I took a deep breath. "Lucas, we need to talk about something important." His smile faded when he saw the seriousness on my face. "Is something wrong? Are the kids okay?" Always the children, always the right concern at the wrong time. "They're fine," I said dryly. "But I need to know something. I need to really know what your commitment to us is." "To my children." He seemed genuinely confused. "But I've told you 1,000 times, I love them as if they were my own. I would do anything for them." That's when I dropped the bomb. Anything, even if it means prioritizing their needs over Mario's and Claudia's. The question fell between us like a block of ice. The waiter passing by instinctively swerved, sensing the tension. Lucas turned pale. "What exactly are you asking?" "I'm asking," I said, measuring each word with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. "If Leo and Sophia need something expensive, like university or orthodontics or a school trip, and at the same time your children also need it, who would you help first?" His face was a poem of disappointment and horror. "My God, are you seriously asking me that question? They're my children. I can't choose between them." "But if you have to choose between them and mine," I insisted, my voice trembling but firm, "because my children are my absolute priority and I need a man for whom they are too. I can't let them grow up feeling like they are option B, the package that comes with me and that you have to attend to with what's left over." My own words sounded logical, fair. It was the speech of a protective mother. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 seconds. "I don't understand. I've tried to include them in everything. I've spent money on them, time, affection. And now you're asking me to abandon my own children, to relegate them to the background." "I'm not asking you to abandon them," I corrected, although deep down that was exactly what I wanted. "I'm asking you to show us that we are your main family, your future family." I was asking for the impossible and I knew it, but in my narrative it was a reasonable request, the only way to be sure. The conversation devolved into a circular and painful argument. I accused him of not being committed enough. He accused me of being irrational and of asking him to betray his own blood. "They are my children," he repeated over and over, as if it were a mantra I refused to understand. "And mine will be too," I shouted in an outburst that made several tables turn their heads. At that moment, seeing him shattered, with glassy eyes, I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it almost bent me in half. For an instant, a tiny voice inside me whispered, "Look what you're doing. Look at the damage you're causing." But I silenced it immediately. It wasn't my damage, it was the necessary collateral damage to protect my own. He got up from the table, throwing down his napkin. "I need some air. This is crazy." And he left, leaving me alone with the untouched remains of the flan and the certainty that I had finally gotten my answer, an answer that I myself had orchestrated. The act of betrayal was complete. It hadn't been infidelity, but something perhaps worse. I had asked him to stop being a father. The confrontation didn't end at the restaurant. That was just the first explosion. The following days were a heartbreaking push and pull of text messages and missed calls. Lucas tried to reason, to find a middle ground. "We can go to therapy," he proposed in a voice message that sounded broken. "We can find a way for everyone to feel equally loved," but I no longer wanted equality, I wanted supremacy for my own. I saw his every attempt at conciliation as a trap, an emotional manipulation to make me lower my guard and accept crumbs for my children. Therapy. What for? So a stranger could tell me my fears were unfounded, that I was being unfair. No, My fears were not unfounded. They were the echo of every struggle I had had to fight alone for years. The final confrontation happened at my house a week after the disaster at the restaurant. He came unannounced, with swollen eyes and a sad determination in his gaze. My children, who adored him, ran towards him shouting, "Lucas." Seeing Leo cling to his leg and Sophia show him a new drawing filled me with a furious panic. That was the danger. They were getting too attached. "Kids, go to your room for a moment, please," I said in a voice that brooked no argument. Their little faces fell, confused by the coldness in my tone. Lucas smiled sadly at them and nodded. "Listen to your mother." As soon as the living room door closed, the mask fell. "I can't go on like this, Elisa," he began, his hands in his pockets. "I love you. I love your children, but what you're asking of me is monstrous. I'm not going to choose. I'm not going to put my children in the background. I'm not that kind of man, and you shouldn't want me to be." His words, so full of integrity, sounded like betrayal to me. "Monstrous," I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Monstrous is wanting to guarantee my children's future. Monstrous is asking the person who claims to love me to prove that we come first. Your children are almost adults. Lucas Claudia is in university. Mario will be 2 in a couple of years. Mine are small. They need more. They need security." I was putting the children in a competition, measuring their needs as if they were products on a scale. He shook his head in desperation. "It's not about a competition, it's about adding, not subtracting. We could have been a big family, all together. I could have helped Claudia with university and Leo with the guitar. It's not the same pocket, Elisa. The heart and the pocket don't work like that." "Yes, they do work like that." I snapped at him, raising my voice. "Time and money are finite. Every minute you spend with them is a minute you don't spend with mine. Every euro you spend on them is a euro you don't spend on my children's future. It's pure math." I listened to myself and it sounded logical, impeccable. I couldn't understand how he didn't see that obvious truth. The argument took an even darker turn when I threw my last and meanest argument at him. "Do you know what's saddest, Lucas? That your children don't even need you anymore like mine need you. Claudia barely speaks to you. Mario sees you on alternate weekends. Why can't you focus on a family that will actually give you a real purpose?" The expression on his face froze. It was as if he finally saw the depth of the abyss that separated our realities. It was no longer just a discussion about priorities. It was a direct attack on his fatherhood, on his love for his children. "Don't ever talk about my children that way again," he said with a terrifying calm. That ever resonated in the silence of the living room like a slamming door. I expected him to fight more, to beg, to offer a desperate compromise, but no. His love for his children was an insurmountable wall, and my demand had been the bomb that had shattered it. He looked at me with infinite pity, as if he were watching a shipwreck. "I thought you were different," he whispered. "I thought you understood what it means to be a parent." He turned and walked out of the living room. I heard him say goodbye to my children in a broken voice. "Goodbye, little ones. Take good care of your mom." And then the front door closed with a dull, final thud. The confrontation was over. I had won. I had protected my children from uncertainty. So why did I feel like my heart had been ripped out? The immediate consequences were a deafening silence. The first few days were a whirlwind of anger and justification. I told my best friend what had happened, painting Lucas as a rigid man, incapable of truly committing to a woman with children. I just wanted security for Leo and Sophia Eureka, and he couldn't give it to me. My friend tactfully tried to point out that perhaps asking him to choose was excessive. I accused her of not understanding, of not being a mother. Everyone was against me. No one understood the primal instinct of a lioness. Then came my children's turn. "Why doesn't Lucas come anymore?" Leo would ask every afternoon, his little face full of confusion. "Is he angry with us?" Those questions were knives. Instead of seeing them as the natural consequence of my action, I used them as fuel for my victim narrative. "No, sweetie, he's not angry," I would say, hugging him tightly. "It's just that Lucas has his own family and sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions." I painted them a picture of him having abandoned us, omitting my ultimatum completely. I was the mother protecting them from a world of men who couldn't prioritize them. They were the victims, and I by association was too. I obsessively reviewed my reasons and always came to the same conclusion. I had done the right thing. Wasn't it my first moral duty to protect my children? Any mother in my position would have felt the same. Society expects single mothers to be grateful for any crumb of attention, to accept any arrangement just to not be alone. But I refused. I refused to let my children be second-class citizens in their own family. My selfishness, because now I was beginning to glimpse that maybe there was some of that, was fully justified by maternal love. It was an impenetrable shield. The weeks passed, and the anger gave way to a deep melancholy. I missed his laugh, his calm, the way he filled the house with a positive energy that I had never managed to generate on my own. But even in that longing, I found a way to blame him. If he had been able to understand me, to give me the security I needed, we would still be together. His stubbornness, his refusal to see my point of view, was the real culprit of our loneliness. I had extended my hand with a logical request, and he had rejected it. He had chosen. He had chosen his almost adult children over a family he could have built with us. Now I find myself here writing this with the house in silence and my heart like a closed fist. Leo asked about him again today. I had to leave the room so I wouldn't break down crying. My decision has brought us immediate pain, but I am convinced that it has saved us from a much greater one in the future. The pain of seeing my children grow up in the shadow of his, the pain of begging for attention and resources. I prefer this clean, sharp pain to the other, slow and corrosive one. I did what any good mother would do. I sacrificed for my children, even if the sacrifice means giving up my own happiness and that of a wonderful man. That is the cross I have to bear, and I would do it 1,000 times more for them. Popular Reddit comments on the main story. Anonymous user. 1. Your story is a case study in self-justification. What you describe is not protection. It's toxic possession. You don't want a partner, you want an exclusive financial and emotional sponsor for your tribe. The most worrying thing is how you use maternal love as a tool to mask a fierce selfishness. Lucas didn't fail you by not choosing you. He saved himself from being absorbed into a cult where only your children exist and where he and his own children were seen as competitors. Your finite pie logic is that of a preschooler, not an adult who wants to form a family. Response from the OP. It's easy to judge when you don't have to go to bed every night wondering if what you give your children is enough. It's not possession, it's responsibility. He could have shown me that we were his priority, but he chose to stay in a comfort zone where his almost adult children were still the center. I can't afford that comfort. My children depend on me for everything. If that's selfishness, then so be it. I'd rather be selfish and have my children have what they need than be generous and have them receive crumbs. Anonymous user 2. You have made one of the most serious mistakes in a blended relationship. Trying to make a father choose between his children is an abominable demand. What you really feared was not that Lucas wouldn't prioritize your children, but that he would do it too, that your children would love him so much, maybe more than you, and that your role as a struggling, martyr mother would be diluted. You destroyed something good because your identity is so tied to sacrifice and a solo fight that you don't know how to function on a team where you're not the only captain. Response from the OP, abominable. Abominable is wanting security. I never asked him not to love them. I asked him to show us that we were his main family. There's a difference. And no, I wasn't afraid they would love him more. That's a ridiculous projection. I was afraid of the pain in my son's eyes when the day came that Lucas had to say, no, we can't go on a trip this summer because the money is for Claudia's university. That pain would be abominable and I acted first to prevent it. Anonymous user 3. Let's analyze your pure logic. You say that time and money are finite, true, but love and the ability to generate resources are not necessarily so. A man like Lucas, stable and with a good job, probably had the ability to expand that pie you're so obsessed with. Instead of joining forces to make a bigger pie for everyone, you demanded that he take a piece from his own children to give to yours. That's not protection, it's a scarcity mindset that condemns your children to grow up in an environment of meanness and distrust. Anonymous user 4. The greatest damage you have done is not to Lucas, who will surely heal and find someone with a healthier mindset. The damage you have done is to your children. You have robbed them of the opportunity to have a stable and loving father figure. And you have taught them that love has impossible conditions and that relationships are based on ultimatums. You have modeled for them that it is better to burn a bridge than to cross it with faith. I hope the security you think you have given them compensates for the void you have created. Response from the OP: meanness, distrust. I have taught them that their mother stands firm for them, that she will not accept less than what they deserve. The void would have been created by Lucas when he inevitably had to prioritize his blood over ours. This pain is temporary. The other would have been forever. You people don't understand a mother's instinct. I prefer them to grow up with the example of a mother who fights alone for them than with that of a mother who settles for a half-hearted love. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the breakup. Lucas's silence is absolute, and every day that passes without a message from him is another confirmation that I made the right decision. If he really cared about us, he would have fought harder. My children, however, don't understand strategic silence. Leo has started having nightmares. Last night, he woke me up screaming. When I hugged him, all sweaty and trembling, he whispered, "I dreamed that Lucas was leaving on a boat and wasn't taking us." I told him it was just a dream, but inside me that dream was a prophecy that I had prevented from coming true. The straw that broke the camel's back was Leo's school play. He had a main role, a tree with a single line, but to him he was the star of Broadway. For weeks he talked about nothing else. "Is Lucas coming to see me?" he asked over and over again. I told him probably not, that he was very busy, trying to prepare him for the disappointment that I myself had cooked up. The day arrived. Leo on stage, anxiously searching the audience with his cardboard costume. I was recording him with my phone, and on the screen I saw his little smile fade every time the auditorium door opened, and it wasn't Lucas. Afterwards, in tears and with the green paint on his face smeared, he told me, I promised him I would be the best tree in the world for him. There, in that hallway full of proud parents, I felt like I was sinking. It wasn't my fault, was it? It was Lucas's fault for making himself so loved. It was the fault of a system that forces single mothers to choose between their happiness and the emotional security of their children. That's when I took refuge in internet forums. I found a private Facebook group for warrior single mothers. I posted my story, an even more polished version where Lucas was the man who didn't want to fully commit. The validation was immediate. "You did the right thing, Queen. No man is worth it if he doesn't put your kids first. They were born first. He just came along." I read those comments as if they were a saving mantra. One woman even wrote me a private message telling me a similar story. My ex also had a daughter from a previous marriage. It was always, "I'm sorry, I can't, I have my daughter." In the end, I left him. Now I'm with a man without children, and it's wonderful. He always puts us first. That story became my new gospel. It was proof that a happy ending existed. I just had to wait for the right man, one without baggage, without other loves competing for the position. Armed with this new certainty, I tried one last desperate manipulation. I sent an email to Lucas, not to reconcile, but to hold him responsible for Leo's pain. I told him about the play, about the nightmares. I wrote, "I just wanted you to know the collateral damage your decision has caused. Leo missed you. I hope your children are worth it." It was a cruel message, I know, but in my head it was an act of justice. He needed to know the cost of his choice. His response came 12 hours later, brief and devastating. "Elisa, you are causing the damage all by yourself. Please don't contact me anymore. I will block this email. I wish you find the peace you are looking for." His coldness left me breathless. How dare he wash his hands of it? He had a part of the responsibility. He had entered our lives and turned them upside down only to leave. I was just picking up the pieces. Now the anger has given way to a deep numbness. Leo no longer asks about Lucas. Sophia has put all the drawings she made for him in a box under her bed. I look at that box and feel a dull hatred towards Lucas for having brought us to this point. The comments on this Reddit forum, those that call me selfish and toxic, I read them with disdain. They are the voice of a world that does not understand the silent war that we single mothers fight. They don't see Leo crying at night. They don't see the emptiness in this house. I do, and that's why I dispelled everything. I reaffirm myself. It was for them. It has always been for them. Any other feeling is a luxury I cannot afford. Popular Reddit comments on the update. 1. Anonymous User 5. Today's lesson. How to blame someone for the consequences of your own actions. You sent him an email to emotionally torture him with your son's pain. A pain you caused by taking him out of his life. You are so manipulative that you use your own son's tears as a weapon. Lucas is right to block you. You are not looking for peace. You are looking for a scapegoat for your guilt. You are creating trauma in your children and then pointing at Lucas so you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror. Response from the OP. I caused the pain. Wasn't it he who by not giving in forced us to this outcome? If he had said yes, that we were his priority, we would all be together and happy. He made a decision. I just showed him the consequences of that decision. If that tortures him, maybe it's because deep down he knows he could have chosen better. My children cry for his absence, not for my decision. There is a crucial difference that you refuse to see. Anonymous User 6. Your update is even more terrifying than your original story. You have taken refuge in an echo chamber of warrior mothers who normalize and glorify your toxic behavior. You are raising your children in a cult of victimhood and meanness. The right man without baggage. That man does not exist. And if he does exist, he is a man without a past, without the capacity for unconditional love that a father like Lucas demonstrates. What you call baggage is life itself. Anonymous User 7. The psychological damage you are doing to your children is incalculable. You are teaching them that love is conditional and that bonds are broken at the first conflict. You are modeling that the solution to problems is control and ultimatums, not communication and compassion. Leo is not crying for Lucas, he is crying for the family that you destroyed. And you, in your blindness, use his crying to feed your martyr narrative. It's profoundly sad. Response from the OP. I did not destroy the family, I protected it from future disappointment. You speak from theory, from the comfort of your perfect relationships. You don't know what it's like to have the well-being of two human beings who depend entirely on you in your hands. I prefer them to learn that their mother is their unbreakable rock, even if it means being the bad guy in other people's stories. Your judgment slides off me. I know that deep down I am doing what I must. Final update. 6 months. Half a year has passed since Lucas walked out that door. Life has gone on. A gray and flat version of what could have been. I followed the unwritten advice of my warrior forums and created a profile on a dating app. My bio was clear, single mother of 2 wonders. Looking for a stable man, without children, who understands that my number 1, 2, and 3 priority are them. The responses were predictable. Desperate men, men who also had children and whom I automatically discarded, or digital ghosts. The search for the perfect man without the baggage of a past life revealed itself to be a mirage. The twist, the catalyst event I never expected, came through my daughter Sophia. She, in her observant silence, had created her own Instagram profile in secret. One day she called me into her room. "Look, Mom," she said, pointing at the screen. It was the profile of Lucas's ex-wife. My heart stopped. There were photos of Lucas, Mario, and Claudia at the beach, smiling happily. Lucas looked more relaxed, younger, even. There was no trace of the devastation I believed I had caused him. And then Sophia, with the unconscious cruelty of a child, slid the screen to a comment on one of the photos. It was from Lucas's ex-wife, under a photo of him with his children. "I'm glad you finally have time for them. That woman you were dating before seemed to want to hide them under a rug. Good for you for prioritizing your family." The words hit me with a physical force. Hide them under a rug. That woman, I was the villain in their story. I was the monster they were glad to be rid of. For 6 months I had convinced myself that I was the victim of Lucas's inflexibility. But in that comment, seen through the eyes of his ex-wife and, what was worse, through the eyes of my own daughter, I saw the distorted reflection of my actions. I was not a protective lioness. I was a bitter woman who had tried to amputate a fundamental part of a good man. For an instant, a single, heartbreaking instant, the facade cracked and guilt flooded me. Everything, the pain of my children, my loneliness, The loss of a wonderful man had been my fault. But the habit of self-justification is stronger than any epiphany. The clarity lasted a breath. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and the defense mechanism activated. You know what I thought? I thought, of course they see it that way. She is his ex-wife, she is jealous, she wants to poison the image they have of me. That woman hadn't been in my living room. She hadn't seen the anxiety in my eyes. She didn't know what it was like to fear for her children's future. Her comment was not a truth, it was resentment. Lucas prioritized his family, yes, his own. He abandoned us. We were the family he chose to leave behind. I gave the phone back to Sophia and left the room. There was no catharsis, no redemptive cry, only a deeper, more ingrained bitterness. Now I don't just justify myself to internet strangers or to myself. Now I have to justify myself to the ghost of that woman and her venomous comment. I have decided to delete the dating app. The perfect man without children does not exist. Or if he exists, I don't deserve him. My role in this life is clear. To be the rock, the martyr, the only unconditional protector of my children. It is a lonely and heavy role, but it is mine. I chose it. Or maybe fate chose it for me. It doesn't matter anymore. The woman who tried to form a family with Lucas died that night in the restaurant. The one who remains is this one, the one they need me to be. And if to be her I have to be the villain in other people's stories, so be it. It is the price of my sacrifice, and I am willing to pay it until the end. Popular Reddit comments on the final update. Anonymous User 8. And there we have it. The perfect culmination of the unreliable narrator's arc faced with direct evidence that she is perceived as the antagonist. There is no learning, no acceptance, only a pathological reinforcement of her victimhood. You have taken the definitive proof of your own mistake and used it to dig deeper into your trench of justifications. It is the price of my sacrifice. No, the price is being paid by your children, who will have to carry the weight of a mother who chose martyrdom over happiness. Anonymous User 9. The moment of clarity was real. You had it and you deliberately drowned it because accepting the truth meant admitting that you destroyed your own happiness and that of your children on a whim. That comment from the ex-wife was not resentment, it was the exact description of your behavior. You wanted to hide his children. You have failed as a partner, and what is sadder, you are failing as a mother by raising your children in this cult of resentment. They are the only real victims here. Response from the OP. You can put all the labels you want on me. Pathological, victimist, antagonist. I only see my children asleep in their beds, safe from broken promises and a future of second best. If my happiness was the price to pay for their security, then it was a fair exchange. I would do it 1,000 times more. Your understanding of the world is simple. Mine was forged in struggle. You will never be able to understand it. Anonymous User 10. This is not a story of a protective mother. It is the tragedy of a woman who confused love with control and who, when confronted with reality, chose to live in a more comfortable lie. I feel sorry for your children, not for having a single mother, but for having a mother who would rather be right than be happy and who will drag them with her in her particular shipwreck. Lucas dodged a bullet. Your children are not so lucky. Response from the OP. Say what you will. My conscience is clear.